Admiral Taman stood at the front of the massive chamber and looked up at the strange beings that filled the seats above him. The Galactic Council Hall was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Thousands of aliens sat in rows that went up so high he could barely see the top. Some looked like giant lizards with scales that changed colors. Others were made of what looked like living crystal that sparkled in the light. There were beings that floated in the air like gas clouds, and others that looked like walking trees, with too many arms. Captain So Young stood beside him with her hands behind her back. She wore her best uniform, but it looked plain next to all the fancy clothes and armor the aliens wore. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo carried a small case with samples of human technology. The case felt heavy in his hands, but not because of what was inside. It felt heavy because he knew the aliens would probably laugh at what humans had built. The being that spoke for the council was a huge lizard creature with bright red scales. Its voice was deep and made the floor shake a little when it talked. The creature said its name was Speaker Vex Thoron, and it had lived for over 2,000 years. Taman tried not to show how scared he was. 2,000 years was longer than most human countries had existed. "Welcome, primitive ones from the small world you call Earth," the speaker said, and many aliens in the seats made sounds that Taman guessed were laughter. "We have watched your slow progress with great interest. You have finally learned to travel between stars, but your ships are crude and your weapons are weak. Your people fight each other over small pieces of land and resources that could easily be shared." So Young felt her face get hot with anger, but she kept quiet. The aliens were not wrong about humans fighting each other, but they said it in a way that made humans sound like stupid children. She looked around the great hall and noticed something strange. There were carvings on the walls that showed buildings and ships. The style looked familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen it before. "We offer you a place in our great community," the speaker continued. "You will be given the rank of Class 7 civilization, which is very generous for a species that has only just learned to leave its homeworld. Most species must prove themselves for many centuries before they receive such honor." Hyunwoo opened his case and showed the council some human inventions. There was a small fusion reactor that could power a city. There was a computer chip that could think faster than any human brain. There was a medicine that could heal wounds in minutes instead of weeks. The aliens looked at these things like a human might look at toys made by a child. Some of them made those laughing sounds again. Floating gas creature spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "These devices show promise, but they are copies of technology we mastered long ago. Your fusion reactor is based on principles we discovered 10,000 years before your species learned to make fire. Your computer uses methods that are common in every school throughout the galaxy. Your medicine contains compounds that grow wild on millions of worlds." Taman felt his heart sink. Humans had worked so hard to create these things. Their best scientists had spent lifetimes figuring out how fusion worked. Their greatest minds had struggled to build computers that could think. Now he learned that aliens considered this old and simple technology that even their children knew about. The speaker pointed to a large star map that appeared in the air above them. Most of the galaxy was colored in bright blues and greens and gold. A tiny red spot near the edge was marked as human space. "You will be given control of this sector," the speaker said. "It contains 12 star systems with 17 planets suitable for your kind of life. This is more space than your entire species has ever seen. You should be very grateful for our kindness." So Young studied the map more carefully. The systems they were being offered were far from any major trade routes. Most of the planets looked old and worn out. Their suns were red giants that would burn out in a few million years. It was like being given a house in the worst part of town and being told to be thankful for it. But what bothered her more were those carvings on the walls. She had been trying to remember where she had seen that style before. Now it came to her. The buildings in the carvings looked like the old temples in Korea that her grandmother had taken her to see when she was a child. The ships looked like designs that human artists had drawn when they dreamed about traveling to the stars. But that was impossible, because these carvings were clearly ancient. A crystalline being that sparkled like a diamond spoke in a voice that sounded like music. "Your species shows potential despite its current limitations. In time, you may advance to Class 6 or even Class 5 status if you work very hard and follow our guidance. Some species have even reached Class 4 after only 50,000 years of proper education. 50,000 years. Taemin tried to imagine humans working for 50,000 years just to move up one level in the alien ranking system. 50,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves and hunting animals with spears made of stone. The idea that humans would need that long to impress the aliens made him feel very small. But Hyunwoo was not paying attention to the rankings and timelines. He was looking at the technology the aliens used in their Great Hall, the lights that provided perfect illumination without any visible source, the gravity fields that let some aliens float while others walked on surfaces, the translation devices that let thousands of different species understand each other perfectly. All of this technology looked familiar to him somehow, not because he had seen it before, but because it felt like technology humans might build if they had enough time and resources. The meeting went on for hours. The aliens explained rules that humans would have to follow. They could not build certain types of weapons. They could not travel to certain parts of the galaxy. They could not share their location with any other species that the Council had not approved. They could not dig too deep into their own planets or build cities above a certain size. The list of things humans could not do was much longer than the list of things they could do. When the meeting finally ended, Taemin and his crew were given quarters in a station orbiting the Council world. The rooms were nice, but felt like a prison. Everything was designed for aliens, and humans had to use special equipment just to breathe the air and drink the water. So Young spent the night looking out the window at the stars and thinking about those carvings. Hyunwoo spent the night taking apart one of the alien devices they had been given as a welcome gift. Taemin spent the night writing a report for Earth that he was not sure how to begin. None of them knew that far away on Earth, a discovery was about to change everything. They thought they knew about humans and aliens, and the history of the galaxy itself. Dr. Eunji brushed sand away from the metal surface and felt her heart start beating faster. She had been digging in the Gobi Desert for 3 months looking for old human settlements, but this was not what she expected to find. The metal was smooth and dark, and it did not look like anything humans had ever made. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, and they seemed to glow with their own light even though they were buried under sand that had been there for thousands of years. Her team worked carefully to clear more sand away from what they now realized was the top of a very large structure. The more they uncovered, the more excited and confused they became. The building was huge and shaped like a pyramid, but with curved sides that looked like they flowed like water. The metal it was made from did not rust or show any signs of age, even though their instruments said it was millions of years old. Dr. Jin-ho arrived 2 days later with equipment to help translate the symbols. He was the best language expert on Earth and could read writing from ancient civilizations that most people had never heard of. But when he looked at the symbols on the building, he had to sit down because his hands were shaking too much to hold his tools. "This is impossible," he said to Yoonji as they stood in front of the largest section of symbols. "These are not alien symbols at all. They are human symbols, but from a time before humans were supposed to know how to write. Look at this, one here. It is like the old Korean symbol for home, but changed in a way that makes it mean something much bigger. And this one is like the Chinese symbol for sky, but it has extra parts that make it mean all the stars in the sky." Yoonji pointed to other symbols that looked familiar but wrong. "These look like Sanskrit but older and more complex. It is like someone took all the old human languages and mixed them together and then made them better somehow. But who could have done that millions of years ago when humans were still learning to use fire?" They found a way into the building through a door that opened when Jin-ho spoke some of the symbols out loud. The words felt strange in his mouth, but somehow he knew how to say them. Inside the building was even more impossible than outside. The rooms were filled with light that came from nowhere, and air that was clean and fresh even though no one had been inside for millions of years. The walls were covered with pictures and symbols and writing that told a story neither of them wanted to believe. The story said that humans had not started on Earth. The story said that millions of years ago, humans had lived throughout the galaxy and had built great cities on thousands of worlds. The pictures showed human faces, but they looked older and wiser than any humans Yoonji had ever seen. These ancient humans had created amazing technology that could do things that seemed like magic. They could move between stars in ships that folded space like paper. They could live for thousands of years and never get sick or old. They could speak to each other across vast distances without any machines. But the most shocking part of the story was about the other beings in the galaxy. The pictures showed creatures that looked exactly like the aliens that Taman had just met at the Galactic Council. The lizard beings and the crystal beings and all the others were there in the pictures. But they were not shown as equals to the ancient humans. They were shown as creations of the ancient humans. Jinho found a section of writing that made him sit down again because he could not believe what he was reading. It says here that the ancient humans made the other species, he told Yunji in a voice that was barely a whisper. They created them to be helpers and companions and guardians of different worlds. The lizard beings were made to be soldiers and protectors. The crystal beings were made to be thinkers and record keepers. Each species was given special abilities that would help them do their jobs. Yunji looked at more pictures that showed the ancient humans teaching the created species how to build cities and make tools and travel between stars. The created species looked happy and grateful, and they seemed to love the humans who had made them. But then the pictures changed and showed something terrible happening. The ancient humans had started fighting among themselves. Some of them wanted to keep controlling the created species forever and make them serve human needs. Others wanted to let the created species grow and learn and become independent. The fighting got worse and worse until it became a war that spread across the entire galaxy. Worlds burned and stars went dark, and millions of beings died in the fighting. In the end, the humans who wanted to give freedom to the created species won the war, but just barely. They were so tired of fighting and so sad about all the death and destruction that they made a terrible choice. They decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to keep their power and technology. They took all the human survivors and brought them to a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, where they could start over as simple beings, without technology or memory of what they had once been. That planet was Earth. The ancient humans had erased their own memories and destroyed most of their technology, and condemned themselves to live as primitives for millions of years. They hoped that when humans finally became smart enough to travel to the stars again, they would be wiser and kinder than their ancestors had been. The building in the desert was one of many hidden all over Earth that would only open when humans were ready to learn the truth about themselves. But the building contained one more terrible secret. Hidden systems throughout the galaxy had been programmed to watch for signs that humans were returning to the stars. When that happened, the systems would send signals to the created species to warn them that their ancient masters were coming back. The signals had already been sent. Yunji and Jinho realized that Taimin and his crew were walking into a trap. The Galactic Council knew exactly who humans really were. They knew that humans had created them millions of years ago. They were probably terrified that humans would remember the truth and try to reclaim their old empire. The generous offer of a small territory at the edge of the galaxy was not kindness. It was an attempt to keep humans isolated and powerless while the council decided what to do about them. Yunji tried to contact Taimin, but discovered that all communications with human ships in alien space had been cut off. The council was not letting any messages get through. Jinho started looking for other hidden sites on Earth that might contain technology they could use to help their people. But both of them knew that it might already be too late. In the ancient human building systems that had been sleeping for millions of years were starting to wake up. Lights that had been dark forever began to glow. Machines that had been silent started to hum with power. Deep beneath the desert floor, massive engines were turning on and preparing to do jobs they had been programmed to do long ago. Similar buildings were waking up all over Earth and on worlds throughout the galaxy. The Aum, created species that now called themselves the Galactic Council, were about to learn that their ancient masters had left them more than just memories and ruins. They had left safeguards and defenses and weapons that could only be activated by the return of humanity to the stars. The galaxy was about to remember why it had once bowed to beings from a small blue world. And this time the humans who returned would not make the same mistakes their ancestors had made. This time they would be ready for war. Speaker Vex Thorin felt his scales change from red to the deep black that meant fear as he read the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Ancient sites that had been dead for millions of years were coming alive. Ruins that archaeologists had studied for centuries were revealing new chambers and technology that defied understanding. Most terrifying of all, the energy signatures matched records from the oldest archives that spoke of the time before time, when the builders ruled the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 3 days without stopping. Representatives from every major species sat in their assigned places, but none of them looked comfortable. The usual sounds of casual conversation and political maneuvering were replaced by worried whispers and nervous movements. Everyone in the Great Hall knew that they faced a crisis unlike anything in recorded history. High Advisor Keth Murren of the Nexari Collective spoke first. Her crystalline form flickered with patterns of light that showed her distress. "The evidence is undeniable," she said in her musical voice that now sounded flat and scared. "Every major archaeological site in our territory shows signs of human origin. The mathematical principles in our most advanced technology match algorithms found in ancient human ruins. Even our own creation myths speak of beings who came from the stars to give us form and purpose." A floating representative of the Ethereal Union added his own disturbing news. "Our genetic records have been analyzed and reanalyzed. The base patterns that define our species contain artificial markers that could only have been placed there by advanced engineering. We are not naturally evolved beings. We were created by the humans and programmed to forget our origins." Emperor Seth Kalar of the Vorthek Empire stood up with movements that showed how angry and frightened he was. His massive frame towered over the other representatives as he spoke in a voice that made the air itself vibrate. "This cannot be allowed to continue. If the humans remember what they once were, they will expect us to bow to them as our creators and masters. My people have ruled 12 star systems for 8,000 years. We will not become servants again just because some ancient history says we should." Other voices joined in agreement. The Zephyrian hegemony had built the largest trade network in the galaxy. The Trilaxian Commonwealth controlled the most advanced shipyards. The Obsidian Syndicate commanded fleets that kept peace across hundreds of worlds. None of these civilizations wanted to give up their power and independence to beings they had thought were primitive newcomers just hours before. But beneath their anger was a deeper fear that none of them wanted to admit. If humans had created them once, they could probably destroy them just as easily. The technology waking up in ancient ruins was far beyond anything the current galactic civilizations could build. Weapons that could destroy stars, ships that could cross the galaxy in moments, defenses that could protect entire worlds from any attack. All of it was human technology from the time when humans ruled everything. Dr. Kyung-soo had been brought to the council as an expert on human history and culture. The aliens wanted to understand what they were dealing with, but they did not like what he told them. "Modern humans have no memory of their ancient past," he explained to the assembled representatives. "We developed our current civilization from the beginning, with no knowledge of what came before. This means we are not the same as the humans who created you. We have different values and different goals." Commander Nara stood beside him as a representative of human military thinking. "Current human military doctrine focuses on defense and protection rather than conquest," she said. "We fight to protect our people and our allies, not to build empires. Even if we regain ancient technology, we would not use it to enslave other species." But the aliens did not believe these reassurances. Emperor Seth Kalar spoke for many of them when he said, "Words are easy to speak, but power corrupts all beings. When humans realize they once ruled the galaxy, they will want to rule it again. When they discover they have weapons that can destroy us with ease, they will use those weapons. We cannot take the risk of allowing them to remember who they really are." The debate continued, but the outcome was already decided. Fear had made the choice for them. The Galactic Council voted to take action against humanity before humans could become a threat to their creators. The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Only a few species voted against the plan, and they were quickly silenced by threats and bribes. President Dong Hyun received the Council's ultimatum while he was in a meeting with Earth's defense ministers. The message was delivered by Admiral Tae-min, who had been allowed to return to Earth specifically to carry this news. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he read the official document that would determine humanity's future. The Galactic Council in its wisdom has decided to offer humanity a final settlement. Taemin read aloud, "You will be given permanent control of the Kepler 442 system at the edge of galactic space. This system contains one habitable world and sufficient resources for a small population. All human vessels currently in galactic space will be escorted to this system immediately. No human ship will be permitted to leave this system for any reason. Any human who attempts to travel beyond the assigned boundaries will be considered a hostile entity and destroyed without warning." Commander Ine studied the star charts that came with the ultimatum and felt her heart sink. The Kepler 442 system was not a generous gift. It was a death trap designed to look like kindness. The star was old and unstable. The planet was barely habitable and had no rare minerals or energy sources. There were no trade routes nearby, and no way to get help if something went wrong. Worst of all, the system was surrounded by automated monitoring stations that would destroy any ship that tried to leave. "They are not offering us a new home," Ine told the assembled leaders. "They are offering us a beautiful prison where we will slowly die of isolation and resource depletion. In a few hundred years there will be no humans left alive, and the Council can forget we ever existed." But humanity had learned things about itself in the past few days that changed everything. Captain Jae-sung had been working with scientists to understand the technology found in the ancient sites. They discovered that the genetic changes the ancient humans had made to themselves before going into exile were not permanent. They were designed to reverse themselves when humanity returned to the stars and began to remember its true nature. Human reflexes were getting faster. Human minds were processing information more quickly. Human bodies were becoming stronger and more resistant to damage. Most importantly, human intuition was starting to work in ways that seemed almost like magic. Humans were beginning to remember how to do things they had never learned, like reading alien languages and understanding complex technology just by looking at it. The first galactic fleets were already moving toward human space when the ancient defense systems came online. Automated sentries that had been hidden in asteroid fields for millions of years began sending signals to Earth. Weapons platforms disguised as dead moons powered up their systems. Ships that had been buried under the surfaces of airless worlds broke free and took their positions around the solar system. Earth's leaders realized they had a choice to make. They could accept the Council's ultimatum and die slowly in exile, or they could trust in the technology and wisdom of their ancestors and fight for their right to exist as free beings in the galaxy they had once ruled. The decision was not difficult to make. Humanity had spent millions of years learning to be better than their ancestors. Now they would prove that lesson had been learned by defending themselves without becoming the monsters their creators had been. Admiral Minji stood on the bridge of the Human Defense Station Kepler base and watched something impossible happen on her screens. Massive structures were materializing out of empty space around the human colonies like ghosts becoming solid. Each structure was the size of a small moon and covered with weapons that had been designed by minds far more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. The ancient human defense grid was coming online after sleeping for millions of years. The first Vorthak fleet arrived expecting to find helpless human settlements protected by nothing more than primitive missiles and energy shields. Fleet Commander Gex Halar had brought 12 of the Empire's most powerful dreadnoughts and enough smaller ships to destroy every human installation in the system. His orders were simple: give the humans one chance to surrender and accept exile to the prison system. If they refused, destroy everything that could support human life. Captain Wu Jin was evacuating civilians from the outer colonies when the alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace. His cargo ships were loaded with families and children who had been told they were going to new homes deeper in human space. The truth was more complicated. The people being evacuated were being taken to ancient sites where their presence would help activate dormant human technology. Every human carried genetic codes that could unlock systems their ancestors had built. The more humans gathered in one place, the more powerful those systems became. The Vorthak fleet sent its ultimatum on all frequencies. Commander Gex Halar's voice was amplified to shake the hulls of every human ship in the system. Primitive humans, you have refused the generous offer of the Galactic Council. You have chosen to resist the will of your betters. This is your final opportunity to surrender. Transport your people to the designated exile system immediately or face complete destruction. Admiral Minji opened a communication channel to respond. Her voice was calm and steady as she spoke words that would change the course of galactic history. Commander Gexhalar, you are trespassing in human space with hostile intent. Your people were created to protect and serve, not to threaten and destroy. Stand down your weapons and withdraw your fleet or face the consequences of attacking your makers. The alien commander's response was exactly what Minji expected. Laughter that sounded like rocks grinding together, followed by orders for his fleet to open fire. The first wave of Vorthak plasma torpedoes raced toward the human defense stations at incredible speed. Each torpedo carried enough destructive power to level a city. The aliens expected to see human defenses crumble and burn. Instead, something amazing happened. Energy barriers that looked like sheets of flowing silver appeared between the torpedoes and their targets. The barriers did not just stop the alien weapons, they absorbed the energy and used it to power themselves. The more the aliens fired, the stronger the human defenses became. Within minutes, the barriers were so bright they could be seen from across the solar system. Commander Gexhalar ordered his ships to switch to kinetic weapons. Massive projectiles made of dense metal were launched at velocities that could punch through the armor of any known starship. But the human defenses adapted again. The same barriers that had absorbed energy weapons now created gravity fields that caught the projectiles and redirected them back at the ships that had fired them. 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts were destroyed by their own weapons before the commander realized what was happening. Dr. Youngie watched the battle from the primary research station and felt a mix of awe and terror as she saw ancient human technology in action. The defense systems were not just powerful, they were intelligent. They learned from each attack and developed countermeasures faster than any computer should have been able to process information. More disturbing was the fact that the systems seemed to recognize the Vorthak weapons and tactics as if they had been programmed specifically to defeat them. The second wave of alien attacks came from the Nexari Collective. Their crystal ships used weapons that manipulated space and time itself. Beams of twisted reality that could age a target to dust in seconds or trap it in loops of frozen time. These were weapons that no known defense could stop because they attacked the fundamental structure of existence itself. But the human defenses had been built by beings who understood reality better than their created children ever could. Ancient human shield generators created bubbles of normal space-time around their targets that prevented the Nexari weapons from taking effect. Counterbeams reached out from human weapons platforms and shattered the crystal ships like glass struck by hammers. The Nexari fleet was destroyed so quickly that they never had a chance to retreat. Captain Sang-wook commanded a research vessel that had been studying one of the ancient sites when the war began. His ship was not designed for combat, but the ancient technology on board made it more dangerous than any warship in the alien fleets. Weapons that could fire through multiple dimensions struck alien vessels that thought they were safely hidden behind moons and asteroids. Defensive systems that existed partially outside normal space made his ship impossible to target or damage. The aliens kept coming in larger and larger fleets as news of their defeat spread across the galaxy. Every species that belonged to the Council sent their most advanced warships to destroy humanity before the situation got any worse. But each fleet that arrived found human defenses that were stronger and more sophisticated than the last. Ancient systems were waking up all across human space and connecting to each other to form a network of incredible power. The most shocking discovery came when human scientists began analyzing the alien technology they captured from destroyed ships. Dr. Tae-young made the announcement that sent chills through every human who heard it. The alien weapons and shields and engines are all based on human designs from millions of years ago, but they are simplified versions that only use a fraction of the original capabilities. It is like comparing a child's toy to the real thing. Even more disturbing was what they found in the alien computer systems. Hidden in the programming of every alien ship were override codes that could shut down any system or take control of any function. The ancient humans had built backdoors into every piece of technology they had given their created species. With the right commands, a human operator could turn an entire alien fleet against itself. Captain Hyejin discovered this when her ship was surrounded by a massive Trilaxian battle group. Instead of fighting, she activated the override codes that her human intuition somehow knew how to use. Within moments, the alien ships stopped firing at humans and started attacking each other. The Trilaxian fleet destroyed itself in a matter of minutes while the human ship sat safely in the middle of the chaos. The war was becoming a slaughter, but not the kind the aliens had planned. Human casualties were almost zero, while alien losses mounted into the millions. Entire fleets were being destroyed by automated defense systems that grew stronger with each victory. Ancient human weapons platforms were coming online throughout the galaxy and attacking any alien military vessel they detected. But the most terrifying revelation was yet to come. Hidden in the genetic code of every alien species were kill switches that could be activated remotely. The ancient humans had built the ultimate safeguard into their creations. With a single command broadcast from Earth, every alien in the galaxy could be rendered unconscious or even killed instantly. The discovery of the kill switches changed everything. Humanity had the power to end the war in moments by simply exterminating every species that opposed them. It was the ultimate test of whether humans had truly learned from their ancestors' mistakes. The choice between mercy and genocide would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the kind of people humanity would become as they reclaimed their place among the stars. The galaxy held its breath as human leaders gathered to make the most important decision in the history of any species that had ever lived. Commander Sijin stood in the restored command center of Babylon Station and felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The ancient space station had been humanity's capital when they ruled the galaxy millions of years ago. Now, it hung in space above Earth like a monument to both human glory and human shame. Every surface in the command center showed holographic displays with information from across the galaxy. The news was the same everywhere. Alien fleets broken and burning. Alien worlds defenseless against weapons they could not understand. Alien leaders hiding in bunkers while their people waited for death to come from the stars. The kill switches were ready. Dr. Boram had spent 3 days confirming that the ancient genetic programming was still active in every alien species. One signal broadcast from Babylon Station would shut down the nervous systems of every non-human intelligent being in the galaxy. Trillions of aliens would simply stop breathing and die without pain or struggle. The war would be over in minutes, and humanity would once again rule over empty worlds and silent stars. President Dong Hyun had called together every human leader who could be reached. They came from Earth and the colonies and the research stations scattered throughout human space. Military commanders and civilian governors and scientists and philosophers all gathered to make a choice that would echo through eternity. Some argued for mercy and forgiveness. Others demanded justice for the attempted genocide of humanity. Most simply stood in shocked silence as they tried to comprehend the magnitude of the decision they faced. Captain Hyejin had seen more of the war than most of the others. Her ship had been in dozens of battles against alien fleets that vastly outnumbered human forces. She had watched alien crews die by the thousands as ancient human weapons tore their ships apart. She had also seen the fear in alien eyes when they realized what they were truly fighting against. "They are not evil," she told the assembled leaders. "They are terrified children who struck out at something they did not understand. We were terrified children once too." Admiral Minji disagreed with the gentle assessment. "They voted to exterminate us based on nothing more than fear of what we might become. They built fleets specifically to hunt down and kill every human in the galaxy. They showed us no mercy when they thought we were helpless. Why should we show them mercy now that we hold their lives in our hands?" The debate continued for hours as reports came in from across the galaxy. Ancient human installations were coming online everywhere the original empire had existed. Worlds that aliens had lived on for thousands of years were revealed to be human colonies, with alien populations that had simply moved into abandoned cities. Alien governments were collapsing as their people learned the truth about their origins and their history. Commander Nara brought news that changed the nature of the discussion. "Long-range sensors have detected movement in the galactic core," she announced to the shocked assembly. "Ships are approaching from beyond the spiral arms. The energy signatures match nothing in our databases, but the scale is massive. Hundreds, of thousands of vessels moving toward our position. Dr. Kyung-soo had been studying the most ancient human records, and now he understood what was happening. The original human empire never controlled the entire galaxy, he explained as new information appeared on the displays around them. They only ruled the outer spiral arms, where we are now. The inner regions and the galactic core are controlled by much older and more powerful civilizations. Our ancestors made contact with these beings but chose to stay in their assigned territory, rather than challenge entities that could destroy stars with ease. The approaching fleets belonged to the true galactic powers, beings so ancient and advanced that they considered the current galactic civilizations to be barely more evolved than bacteria. They had allowed humans to rule the outer arms as a sort of experiment to see if young aggressive species could learn wisdom and restraint. When humans had exiled themselves, the core powers had watched to see what would happen when they eventually returned. This war was not just about human survival or alien fear. It was a test that humanity had to pass before they would be allowed to take their place among the true rulers of the galaxy. The choice between using the kill switches and showing mercy would determine whether humans were ready for that responsibility or needed to be contained like their ancestors had been. Captain Jae-sung had been monitoring alien communications and brought disturbing news about what was happening on alien worlds. Civilian populations are rioting against their governments, he reported. They have learned that their leaders knew the truth about human origins and chose war instead of negotiation. Many alien species are demanding that their leaders surrender and ask for human forgiveness. Dr. Yoon-ji had been studying the psychological profiles of the various alien species, and her conclusions surprised everyone. Most of these beings are naturally peaceful and cooperative, she said. The aggressive behavior we have seen comes from their programming. The ancient humans designed each species for specific purposes, but they also built in behavioral controls that could be activated during emergencies. Fear of human return triggered those controls and made normally peaceful beings act like warriors. The revelation that alien aggression was partially artificial changed everything. The beings attacking humanity were not acting according to their true natures. They were following ancient programming that forced them to see returning humans as a threat that had to be eliminated. In a sense, they were as much victims as humans were. President Boram made the decision that would define humanity's future among the stars. Standing before the assembled leaders and speaking to the galaxy through every communication system on every world, she announced humanity's choice. We have the power to destroy every alien species in the galaxy with a single command. Our ancestors built that power into you when they created you, but we choose not to use it. The kill switch signals were not activated. Instead, humanity broadcast a different message to every alien world and every alien ship. Override codes that would shut down the aggressive programming and allow alien species to return to their natural peaceful states. Within hours, the alien fleet stopped attacking and started sending messages asking for negotiation and forgiveness. Captain So Young commanded the delegation that met with alien leaders at a neutral station near the Galactic Center. The beings, who had been trying to destroy humanity just days before now, knelt before their creators and begged for mercy. Some offered to become servants again. Others asked to be allowed to live in exile far from human space. All of them expected punishment for their attempted genocide. Instead, humanity offered something that none of them had expected: partnership as equals rather than servitude as creations. The ancient human empire was gone forever, but the new human Commonwealth would welcome any species that chose to join freely. There would be no masters and servants, no creators and creations, just different species working together to explore the infinite mysteries of the universe. Dr. Tae-young began the great work of teaching galactic civilization about their true history. Ancient sites became schools where aliens could learn about their origins without shame or fear. The technology that had been used for war was converted to peaceful purposes that would benefit all species. Planets that had been damaged by fighting were restored using ancient human terraforming systems. The beings from the galactic core finally arrived to judge humanity's performance. They appeared as beings of pure energy that could take any form they chose. Their leader spoke with a voice that resonated in the minds of every living thing in the galaxy. You have passed the test that your ancestors failed, the entity said. They chose exile rather than learn wisdom. You have chosen wisdom rather than power. The galaxy beyond awaits your arrival. The test had been about more than just mercy and restraint. It had been about growth and learning and the willingness to admit past mistakes while working to do better. Humanity had proven that millions of years of exile and struggle had taught them lessons that their powerful ancestors had never learned. The galaxy was no longer divided between rulers and subjects. For the first time in cosmic history, different species could work together as true equals united by shared curiosity, rather than divided by fear or greed, and humanity would guide them not as masters returning to reclaim their empire, but as teachers helping their former creations become something greater than anyone had ever imagined possible. The stars themselves seemed brighter as the new age began and infinite possibilities stretched out before all the children of the galaxy.